My lords, my ladies, and everyone else here not sitting on a cushion. Today you find yourselves equals, for you are all equally blessed. For I have the pride, the privilege, nay, the pleasure to welcome you to the one and only UPbecoming podcast. Since life is more than just what you become or where you go, the UPbecoming podcast wants to journey with you to consider the fact that Christians aren't just becoming something or someone, but we're becoming all the things that aren't who God made us to be. You too can be free to be exactly who God made you to be. And in this podcast, we're here to help. And now, I introduce to you a host, sired by hosts. A host that can trace his lineage all the way back to Star Wars Episode 4. I first met him atop a mountain near Jerusalem, praying to God, asking his forgiveness for this extended introduction. And so, without further gilding the lily, and with no more ado, I give to you the secret of serenity, the protector of Italian masculinity. We walk in the garden of his turbulence, Mr. Jared Grover!
Okay, does that make you feel better? Well, I guess it does a little bit. And yes, this is Jared, Mr. Jared Grover, your host of the one and only UPbecoming podcast. I am excited for this being the first official full episode of the UPbecoming podcast. It's been a long time coming, a lot of different details being worked out through it, but I am excited and blessed to be able to have the opportunity to do this. So yes, again, this is the UPbecoming podcast with your host, Jared Grover. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. If you're from eclectic Alabama, or if you're maybe from Cake, Alaska, maybe you live in Arapahoe, Colorado, or then there's lots of funny ones. Man's Spur, Mud Hole, Florida, Coffee, Georgia. You're all welcome, and it's good to have you. Thanks for listening in. And I hope that during this time you will be blessed and we'll have a lot of good information and interaction with a very special guest that I have today. One of my best friends. I mentioned in my previous episode just some introductions of some of the people we were going to have on the podcast, some of the thoughts and things we were going to talk about on our previous podcast, which was just recently posted. Please do listen to that former podcast if you haven't had a chance, because there's a lot of great introductions there. But we're looking forward to going forward and seeing some good stuff going on here. So one of the people I talked about was one of my very best friends, Mr. Joshua Hiatt, and Josh and I are very close. He was in my wedding. So many great things about Josh, and he just brings so much to the table. He has been an inspiration to me in many different ways, has so much to offer, so many things going on in his own life, and through this podcast, as we mentioned, we ended up changing it from being called the Unbecoming podcast to the UPbecoming podcast, due to the fact that we did find out that there was somebody else that had a podcast with the title Unbecoming, so we changed it to UPbecoming after a conversation with another Christian friend of mine who's a podcast host as well. And thank you to Eric Nevin for that, and then my other friend Mike Anthony, who does podcasts, really had a big encouragement to me in order to get this started and going forward. So what I've done today is I've invited my friend Josh to join me. In the future, he may end up being a guest co-host with me sometime. Currently, among many other things, he is a teacher at a great Christian school in the state of Maine. But I asked him to come on because I feel like in the next couple of episodes, as you get comfortable with me and learning about who I am and different things about me and the purpose of this podcast, I thought it was important to bring in somebody like Josh and some people like Josh who can kind of ask me questions, who can speak to me about the topic and the idea of what it's like for to live a life that is pleasing to God, to live a life that is every day seeking to be more and more like God. And so Josh is got a lot of wisdom. He's given me lots of wisdom over the years, and we've spent time with each other, and we've lived with each other, and we've seen each other at our greatest times in life and some of the most difficult as well. So we have got my friend Josh. Let's see if this is going to work. Okay, can you hear me, Josh?
Could you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Excellent. It's working. It is working. So one thing that I'll mention right off the bat is Josh is very he's similar to me in a lot of ways, but one way that we're very similar is that we love randomicity. And I think that you'll catch some of that along the way, but we'll even do an episode, I think, in the future, maybe titled Randomicity. And I think we'll bring Josh on and you'll get a random run for your life. So anyway, Josh, thank you again for coming on, my friend, and let's see how this goes. All right. Did you leave me already?
I am here. I was not sure you wanted me to speak after that.
So, well, you can speak whatever you want.
Okay.
This is just a regular conversation. Everybody knows out there that this isn't live at the moment. In the future, we might do live, but we'll be doing some production and stuff. But we're just talking. It's conversation, and that's how it's going to go. So we're back and forth. You can ask any question you want, or you can just shoot the breeze, whatever works for you.
I got a question. Okay, so it was the Unbecoming podcast, then it goes to UpBecoming podcast. Can you just kind of explain that name? I guess I'm a little confused on the name, what it means.
That's a very good question, and thanks for asking. Actually, what it is if I can pull it up here. Initially, I'd been doing a video project with a new friend of mine named Mike, a Christian guy in the South that just kind of encouraged me to think about podcasting. And in that process, I came across, it was a quote, basically.
Was it a Hillary Clinton quote?
It was not a Hillary Clinton quote. No, a quote. I don't even know. One of the few quotes I know of hers is, "It takes a village to raise a child," but sometimes
I know that was her authentic or original quote, but
I don't know if that. No, I don't know. I was going to say village idiot, but maybe I shouldn't say that. That's not. Let's see.
It'll be UpBecoming.
Up, but that's right. That's exactly the point. Trying to do something different, trying to talk better, trying to make better choices in the way that I speak. So basically, I'll bring it up when I can find it. But there was a quote that basically talked about that maybe life is more than just what you become. Maybe it's more about what you unbecoming all the things that you were never meant to be. That kind of a thing, and it was really inspiring to me. And it's not like it's something that you weren't already aware of. We know we're all on this journey together. We're learning and we're growing. But just reading it that way caused me to stop and think that we're all that we spend so much time trying to attain something or trying to become something, which, those different things are fine and they're good and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if our goal is to be the best that we can be, is to do what God wants us to do and live that up-becoming life, that life that is pleasing to Him, that looks to Him, that realizes that you're on this journey. It just helps you to kind of focus better. on that same line, I initially wanted to keep that name, but the person that has another podcast named The Unbecoming Podcast, her name is Phoebe Morochek. I spoke with her, and the interesting part of all of this is I was challenged when I talked to her. I was challenged because I really wanted to keep that name, and I was trying to find ways to see if maybe she'd let me keep it and say, well, they don't have to be, they can be the same name, but just different types of podcasts, because her podcast is significantly different than what mine is going to be like. But she explained to me very passionately how much that meant to her, how much time she spent building that brand, how it kind of envelops her life in a lot of ways. And she talked about how one of her friends was in a situation right now where the same thing happened. Somebody wanted to keep the same name that she had already had, and they had to go to court for it, and she lost all kinds of money. And so at that point I said, well, you know what, at the end of the day, I don't want to disrespect you, and I want to be able to, it's not that big of a deal. So when I talked to my friend Eric, he said, what about UPbecoming? What do you think about that? That kind of fits a little bit along the same lines. It sounds good. And so I took it, and that's where that came from.
So, and I think it's interesting because you're saying unbecoming is kind of like removing, stuff from your life, like the stuff not becoming your, your flesh nature, almost kind of removing that. And the upbecoming is kind of the same. It's kind of the same thing, right? It's the same things happening to you, spiritually.
Yes, exactly. It's not really. It is the same thing. I mean, it was a little bit tricky at first when I came up with a name because normally when you hear somebody say it's unbecoming of you, that's not really a good thing.
Not flattering.
That's not flattering. But the point was, with the word unbecoming, which is the same with upbecoming, is that we are learning and we are growing and we are trying to get rid of those unbecoming things. We're unbecoming the things that we shouldn't be, and we're becoming the things that we should be, or we're growing and we're getting to that place. So yeah, it makes sense when you say it that way to me.
Yeah, because and I was actually just thinking about this a couple of days ago, is how, when you're born, you're born with all types of kind of stuff. We're born with that sin nature.
Yeah.
And like we're always trying to remove that, and really the only way of removing that is where our focus is.
Mm-hmm.
And we could become a lot of things, but if our focus is not on God, then our chances of us becoming what we are meant to be are pretty slim.
Mm.
And it just kind of, you know my story. I came from quite a background of getting in trouble and just kind of living a life away from God.
Mm-hmm.
And as I began to focus in on the Word, as I began to focus in on those things just kind of shed themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the concept of what you're trying to do here, because I think it's we need to think about where our focus is.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the truth is, one of the aims of the podcast also is the honesty and the recognition and the just the conversation that Christians certainly aren't perfect at all, and we have so much to learn, and we're on this journey. There's an unfortunate perception out there by so many that when you claim to be a Christian, that you're supposed to be perfect, or you can't do anything wrong, or you don't really struggle. And there's lots of different ways that people see things, but from my perspective, like, I could use the example of you in a great way, and that is that when I first met you, and just learning and getting to know you